Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. It's another vlog week. It is the end of the week before the week that I end up going on vacation. So I finished 3 books this week. And I'm continuing to read other books. I should finish at least, definitely one more this week, plus possibly a few others. So I will talk about the books that I have finished first. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I've talked about this book. What the setup is, a woman gets in trouble with her stepfather, causing bad publicity, and she ends up having to go to the town where her father uh, lived. Her father has passed away when she was much younger. And basically, she has to be there for 3 months. She goes there, meets the sea captain. He thinks she's stuck up. She thinks he's a pain in the ass. And of course, they start to fall for each other. And it goes from there. I liked the book at the beginning as it started. The more it went on, the less I liked it. A couple of the big problems with it is the sea captain, Brandon. He was married to a woman in town. She passed away. He's been widowed 7 years. From what I can see, this is basically the only woman that he's been with. He has not been with anybody since she's passed away. One, he basically he wore his ring for the 7 years after until Piper, the girl from LA, came to town, and he basically kept the ring on and did this because he works with his wife's father, and I guess he didn't want his father-in-law to feel bad, even though the way he describes the relationship with his wife, it was more of a friends thing than a actual relationship. So he's essentially only been with one person, and yet he's a sexual dynamo with his only experience being with a woman that he really didn't seem to love much. But okay, sure. I mentioned before the huge man, small woman thing. Boring, stupid. Also, Brandon seems to be very possessive. I'll get a little bit graphic here. Stuff that will be in the novel if you choose to read it, or I've read it. He does something in the bedroom that, I guess, in the bedroom, if both of you into it, it's fine. But he grabs near her crotch area, says mine. But he does that repeatedly several times through the book, often when it's not related to sex. And he just comes across as very possessive of her. And at one point, the spoiler alert, he acts fairly jealous. And he throws such a bitchy little temper tantrum that I've talked before about the Hating Game's Joshua Templeman. I do not think that Brendan, whose last name I cannot remember, is anywhere near as bad as Joshua. But he definitely needs to get more relationships under his belt before getting with a woman, because he's pathetic and he doesn't deserve a relationship that he's not able to handle yet. Piper, the female main character in there, I did not have any problem with. Fairly standard stuff. Spoiled rich girl learns the value of uh, work and friendship, etc. She has a great relationship with her sister. She was perfectly fine in this. The plot was essentially fine, although it's nothing new. But my real big problem with the book was the character of Brendan, who started out fine as the sunshine grumpy trope. Fine, fine, fine. But he's just an asshole. And I mean, we're supposed to think he's not an asshole, but I didn't get that. He's an asshole. So I am reading another book, which I will talk about a little bit, from Tessa Bailey. But before they actually get together in the book, I probably would have rated this very highly. Probably a 4, maybe a 3.5, but leaning towards a 4. But as the novel went on, I have to rate this 2.5. This was recommended by Jack Edwards. If you people follow him, you may like it. This could just be a me thing. That's fine. But not enjoyable. Didn't like it. I also read Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. It is a book that I read based on recommendation from my daughter Robin, who you can follow at a Hobbit's reading list. I've had a sketchy relationship with books that have been recommended by my daughter, or books that she has been looking forward to reading that I read. And again, that was my fault for picking a book that she merely wanted to read, but I had an awful time, and that was Something Fabulous, which we have recorded a video about, she and I, about it, which I will link one of these, this one, I think. And I will be honest, when I first started reading this, I didn't think it was as bad as Something Fabulous, but I was not enjoying it. Starting off, it was really kind of slow, and I wasn't liking the characters. But by the end of the novel, I enjoyed it much more. About a man, Wallace Price, who dies and then goes to basically a way station where they go before they move on, and meets the ferryman there, Hugo, and there's also the Reaper who brings him to the way station, who is May, and also the ferryman's grandfather, Nelson, is there. Nelson has not moved on yet. He is dead. And also there's a dog. He's dead too. I didn't appreciate May and Nelson particularly. Probably the first 150 pages. I have mentioned before, I have a problem with people who are basically assholes just to be assholes. Wallace did nothing to these people. Wallace was not a great person in life, but he did nothing to these people to warrant his treatment. Now, as the novel went on, they both treated him better, and the relationships became better. Hugo, the ferryman, warranted some eye rolling at the beginning of the novel. It kind of, I would say, he sounded a little fortune cookie like in some of the stuff he said. He also runs a tea shop. I hate tea. Maybe I'm prejudiced there, so I don't know if that is. But also, as the novel went on, I enjoyed it more. I enjoyed his and Wallace's relationship as it went on. I think some of the things that happen in the novel weren't necessary, but I felt like the author felt he had to do them just because, oh, we have to move forward, even though it's about this one thing. I have to have this other thing. I would have been just fine with the other thing, but the other thing didn't bother me. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I probably would have ranked it higher if it wasn't such a slog to get through the first 150 pages or so. But once I got past that, I greatly enjoyed it. I will possibly read TJ Klune books in the future. I don't know. I probably won't ask my daughter because, again, we have different opinions. I will read another Tessa Bailey book merely because I am reading another one right now. But after that, I don't know. The third book I finished this week is The Pothunters by PG Woodhouse. Did not enjoy this book. This is the first book that I have given a negative ranking to for a PG Woodhouse book. It is his first novel. It was published when he was 21 in 1902. It's about some sports trophies that are stolen at a school, and a bunch of different characters in the novel, trying to figure out who took it, people trying to keep secrets, people trying to not get caught doing stuff. It's 120 pages, and there are more characters in here than I can keep track of. If I were to try to tell you who the main character was, I couldn't. The closest I could say is maybe it's Jim, but I think there may be other characters who actually have more page time than Jim. You meet characters in the first chapter that you don't see again at all. You meet characters in other chapters that just go away for 8 or 9 chapters and come up, and then you go like, who is this? Because you refer to this person by a nickname rather than his name, so I'm thinking it's two different characters. So it's also does not have the trademark Woodhouse humor in it. So that was not that enjoyable. If you enjoy Woodhouse and if you enjoy pain, check out the I'll Be Dashed, a Woodhouse podcast that Robin and I do. This one won't be published probably until the 1st of September, but we've done, I believe, 6 other podcasts, and they're quite humorous. So you can check those out on Spotify or any other place that you can find podcasts. So let's talk about books that I haven't finished yet. I will talk about Horns, which is the one that I am most likely to finish this week. I talked about it last week. I've read it before. I recall enjoying it before. I don't know that I enjoyed as much as I did before, or if there's stuff that happens in the latter half of the novel that prompted that enjoyment. My main problem is one, so far, pretty much everybody is bad. The main character, Ig, grows horns, which makes people tell the truth. And he can also get people to do stuff as long as it's something that they wanted to do already, but maybe we're not uh, willing to do without, ripping away their resistance. So far, everybody has said mean things and hateful things and angry things, and people want to do bad things. And then we go to a flashback of Ig's life meeting Marin, who was his girlfriend, who was killed. And a lot of people think that Ig did it, although he did not. That is pretty much, we know that from near the beginning that he did not murder her. And we are told who did murder her fairly quickly in the novel. I will say that my biggest problem with the novel right now, and as I said, I've read it before, but I read it a long time ago. Oh, it was published in 2010. So I don't think I read it in 2010, but it wasn't too long after that. So it's probably been a decade since I've read this book. I've only read it the one time. The villain of the piece is cartoonish. And the villain being cartoonish makes the main character look a little bit foolish. Although we're not necessarily meant to be on Ig's side. He is, I mean, I would say he's more an anti-hero than a hero, so far at least. It's enough to keep my interest. I don't know how I will feel about it at the end, but I will tell you in next week's, because I will finish that one. I will also mention, I don't believe I mentioned, The Pothunters, PG Woodhouse, 2 stars out of 5. Oh, I finished 4 books. I finished 4 books. I forgot to mention it because I finished it a few days ago, and it's been such a part of my life. I finished Don Quixote. Yeah, I finished Don Quixote. Over 1,300 pages worth. I listened to it mostly on Audible. I did read probably 2 chapters on Kindle, but it was also a different translation, so it was a little strange. So mostly on Audible, 39 hours. I enjoyed it for the most part. I enjoyed part two much more than I did part one. Part one, I've talked about before, but part one was basically Don Quixote is a man who basically reads too many books of chivalry and decides that he is a knight errant. He takes his servant to be his squire, Sancho Panza, and he goes in search of adventures, and he gets his ass kicked, 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 and Sancho gets abused, and it's very repetitious in the first part. Again, this is over 1,300 pages, which they're split up almost evenly. Part two is just a little bit longer than part one. So you're looking at like 650 pages for part one. And it's just repeat, repeat, repeat. It's Charlie Brown in the football. So it gets a bit uh boring. It does get broken up in part one by tales of other people, although this is set in the early 1600s, I believe. So what people think is right then is not necessarily what is right now. There is one character, I believe Don Pedro, who tells the woman that he will marry her, and she gives herself up to him, and then he doesn't marry her. So huge douchebag, right? But she eventually finds him again, and he agrees to marry her, and so he's a hero. Which I guess back then, sure, but now it's like, no, you're still a douchebag, but different times. Part two is much better because one, it was published 10 years after the first part, and they just put the 2 novels together basically. But part two, there is a book written about Don Quixote within the book. So people in the book have read a book about Don Quixote, so they know about Don Quixote. Don Quixote gets beat up far less. He actually suffers very little through most of the novel. Not quite the same for Sancho Panza, but um, he is also treated quite shabbily by many people. I will point out, as I pointed out before, Don Quixote is a madman. He's mad. He has a mental illness. So when characters in both parts, and especially in part two with the Duke and the Duchess, who are horrible people, take advantage of him at his for their own enjoyment. Obviously, back then they looked at madness one way compared to how they look at it now. It was kind of hard to read, but also it's hard to feel sympathy for Don Quixote. For one, he didn't really suffer much. I mean, he's mad. He just in his mind turns anything that happens to him into part of his tale. Sancho Panza suffered a lot. And honestly, Sancho Panza was my favorite character. Not so much in part one. I liked him part one, but I don't know. Maybe he was my favorite character in part one, but particularly in part two, he stood out more, and I enjoyed Sancho Panza greatly. If Sancho Panza wasn't in the novel, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as successful. I take kind of how people treat each other. I took a little bit of what, class, mental illness, nationality, probably not necessarily what the author was looking to talk about at the time, but it's kind of what I took. I gave this one 4 stars out of 5. I would say probably part two, 4.5 out of 5. Part one, maybe 4 stars, but probably somewhere like 3.75 or so. So together, 4 stars. It's a long book. I don't know that I'll ever read it again, but I'm glad I did read it. The second Tessa Bailey book I'm reading is Unfortunately Yours. I'll be honest, did not read this much this week. I'm on page 78, probably pretty close to what I was last week when I did my vlog. I'm not enjoying the main male character, August. He's worse than Brendan in It Happened One Summer. So I might finish it this week. It just depends what's going on. I'm also reading Giant Spread by Agatha Christie. It is a novel that she wrote as Mary Westmacott. I haven't really moved too much in here. I've been trying to finish these other books before I really get into it. It is one of the books by Agatha Christie I have not read yet. I have not read any of the Mary Westmacott novels, and I am going to be doing 5-year battles for Agatha Christie, much as I have for Stephen King. The Stephen King ones will be ending by the end of August, so I want to get moving on the ones for Agatha Christie. So I need to read a few more novels. Glitterland by Alexis Hall. Also have not read very much into this. I'm reading this because Robin, my daughter, suggested I should after the travesty that was Something Fabulous. She thinks I will enjoy this, so we shall see. I also am not reading, I haven't read much, Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Not really much to say about it. Like I said, I haven't really read too much this last week. I am in between audiobooks, sort of, right now. I finished Don Quixote, and I have been reading Horns by Joe Hill and also listening to it. After I finish that, I'm going to be listening to The Red House Mystery by A.A. Milne, who you will know as the author of Winnie the Pooh, 100 Acre Wood, all that stuff when we were 6. I've only read the 100 Acre Wood stuff. I don't like to say Winnie the Pooh because, quite honestly, I'll be super duper honest. I hate Winnie the Pooh, the character. I don't like Pooh at all. Piglet is one of my favorite fictional characters ever, so you see my dilemma there. I did one vlog where I started off in my bedroom where I have all my Piglet stuff. Very hard to find Piglet stuff that doesn't have Pooh with it. So I decided to read a non-100 Acre Wood book. This is a mystery. Gonna see how it goes. Have not read anything else from him except 100 Acre Wood stuff, so we'll see. I will do another vlog next week, a day early, because I'm going to be going to Disney World next week. Mainly, I'll just be talking about if I've finished anything and what I will be reading on vacation. I will probably finish 2 books on audiobook because I have to drive to pick up my kid. And then we're just going to fly from there to Orlando and then back and then drive back. So I'll have essentially 16 hours in the car. Plus, I will have time on the airplane. And I don't know how much time I will actually have at Disney World. I'm not going to try to read unless, I don't know, I'm waiting in a really long line, which hopefully I won't be. That one will be a lot more videos of Disney World, probably. So that is it for this week. Please like and subscribe, and thank you very much.